Right now, in your kitchen, there's a machine whose entire job is to damage your food, to break it apart, to burn the outside and destroy the structure of the inside with heat, on purpose, before you are allowed to eat it. You paid money for that machine. You would be genuinely upset if it stopped working tomorrow. And you have never once in your entire life asked why you own it. 8 billion people on this planet. 8 billion of us take perfectly good food and deliberately wreck it before it touches our mouths. And there is not one other animal, anywhere on Earth, that does this. Not one. Not a single species. Chimpanzees do not cook, and they share almost 99% of your DNA. Crows do not, and crows use tools and hold personal grudges against specific humans for years. Octopuses do not, and an octopus can open a jar from the inside. And here's my favorite detail. In northern Australia, there are birds, black kites, and brown falcons that pick up burning sticks from bushfires and drop them into dry grass to start new fires and flush out prey. They are using fire as a hunting tool, on purpose. And then they eat what they catch completely raw. They got all the way to arson and stopped. So why us? And here's the part that should stop you cold, because the obvious answer is wrong. The obvious answer is that we cook because we are smart. According to some of the most interesting research of the last 30 years, it runs the other way round. We did not start cooking because we got clever. We got clever because we started cooking. The fire came first. The brain came second. There are layers to this, each stranger than the last, and the last one is going to change how you feel about your own skull. Let us go. Start with the obvious suspect. Taste. Maybe we are the only ones who cook because we are the only ones who like it, and everything else prefers its dinner raw. Clean theory. Completely wrong. And we know it is wrong because somebody went and asked the chimpanzees. At a sanctuary in the Republic of Congo, researchers offered chimps raw sweet potato and cooked sweet potato. The chimps were not confused, not suspicious. They did not need convincing. They went straight for the cooked one, overwhelmingly, immediately. Cooked meat, too. Which means the taste for cooked food is not ours. It is older than us. It was already sitting in our shared ancestor before anyone in our family line had a chin. But it goes further, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. The same researchers built what they called a cooking device. It was a fake, a plastic bowl with a lid. A raw potato went in and a cooked one came out, but from the chimp side of the table it looked like a magic box that turned raw into cooked. They understood it almost immediately. They started handing over their raw food and waiting for the cooked version to come back. Think about what that requires. Giving away food you are already holding, food you could eat right now, to a box for a delayed reward. That is not instinct. That is a plan. Then they went further. They carried food across the room to reach it. Some started saving raw food instead of eating it so they could cook it later. Chimpanzees do not just accept cooking, they invest in it, which demolishes the comfortable version of this story. Every ingredient of cooking, the taste, the patience, the understanding that raw goes in and better comes out, is already sitting inside an animal that has never once roasted anything. So the thing separating you from a chimpanzee is not the wanting, not the waiting, not even the thinking. It is one specific, physical, terrifying thing the chimp cannot get its hands on: the fire itself. And we need to be honest about fire, because we have made it far too friendly in our heads. You think of fire as a knob on a hob, a little blue ring, something you switch off. That is not fire. That is fire kept as a pet, long after the argument was won. Real fire is a wild animal that eats everything it touches, never sleeps, and kills you by breathing on you. Every creature in an African landscape runs from it. That is the correct response. That is what natural selection spent hundreds of millions of years installing in every nervous system on this planet, because the ones who were curious about fire did not have grandchildren. And then, somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, one animal walked the wrong way, toward it, and stayed. And staying is the hard part, not the starting. Everyone pictures the invention of fire as a spark, a hairy genius rubbing sticks together while the music swells. Almost certainly wrong. The first fires were not made. They were found. Lightning strike, wildfire, a smoldering log, free fire, lying on the ground for anyone brave enough to walk into a burnt landscape and pick it up. Making fire from scratch probably arrived hundreds of thousands of years later. What came first was keeping it. And keeping it is relentless. It has to be fed, all night, forever. Carried when you move, sheltered from rain, watched by somebody while everyone else sleeps. Fire is not a discovery. Fire is a job. It is the oldest job our species has, and somebody has been doing it every night for 1 million years so that you could be born. So what does cooking actually do? Because if the answer is makes it taste nice, this whole story collapses. Heat is doing violence to your food at the molecular level, and it is doing you an enormous favor. Protein is folded into tight little structures. Heat unfolds them so your enzymes can get in. Starch in a raw root is locked in hard granules your body can barely touch. Add heat and water and they burst into something your gut can strip for energy. Cell walls rupture. Toxins break down. Parasites die. Every one of those is heat doing a job your digestive system would otherwise do itself, slowly, expensively, and badly. Which gives us the most important sentence in this video. Cooking is digestion that happens outside your body. You take the slowest, most expensive part of being an animal and you hand it to a fire. Which brings us to the thing you clicked on. Because if all fire did was soften dinner, this would be a footnote. It is not a footnote. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, and it eats around 20 to 25% of all the energy you burn. Sitting still, doing nothing. Right now, 1/5 of everything you have eaten today is being spent on the object reading this sentence. In a newborn, it is worse. More than half of the entire child's energy budget goes to the brain. Nothing else in the animal kingdom runs hardware this expensive, and the reason is neurons. You have around 86 billion of them, and every one is a cell that never stops drawing power. Now here's the math that broke the field. When you calculate how many hours a great ape must spend feeding per day to pay for its neurons on a raw diet, you get a hard ceiling. A gorilla already feeds for 8 or 9 hours a day and it is maxed out. It cannot afford one more neuron. It is not that gorillas are not clever enough to grow a bigger brain. It is that there are not enough hours in the day to feed one. And when you run that same calculation on a primate with your body size and your 86 billion neurons eating raw, the answer comes back at over 9 hours a day of continuous feeding. Every day. Forever. With no time left to hunt, sleep, raise a child, or be a person. So on a raw diet, your brain is not expensive. Your brain is impossible. The animal you are cannot be built out of raw food. Sit with that, because it inverts everything. Your brain is not an achievement. Your brain is a purchase. And the thing that paid for it was fire. Cooking bought your brain the hours it needed to exist by taking the digestion out of your body and putting it in a fire pit. That is not a metaphor. That is an energy budget. And once you see it that way, you start looking around your own body for the receipt. Because a purchase that big does not come free. Something had to be sold to pay for it. And it was. In the 90s, 2 researchers found the receipt. Brains are metabolically expensive, yes, but so is an organ nobody thinks about, your gut. Intestines are hungry, greedy, constantly working tissue, costing nearly as much per gram to run as brain tissue does. So they asked a simple question. If we are running a brain 3 times bigger than we should, where is the money coming from? Our guts are tiny. A primate your size should have a digestive tract substantially bigger than yours. Ours is roughly 60% of what the equation predicts. We paid for the brain by selling the stomach. And you cannot sell your stomach unless something else is doing the digesting. And it is visible from across the room. Look at a gorilla. That enormous barrel gut pushing out below the ribs is not fat. That is fermentation equipment. A gorilla is a walking compost heap that breaks raw leaves down internally with bacteria over many hours. Every big raw plant-eating primate has that shape. You do not. You have a waist, you have an ape's requirements, and none of an ape's equipment, and it goes right up into your face. Your teeth are pathetic. Small, blunt, thin enamel on a jaw that would embarrass your ancestors. There's even a gene that builds the huge jaw muscles other primates use to crush raw food. In humans it is broken, switched off, dead. It stopped working roughly 2.5 million years ago, and we have walked around ever since with the tidy little jaw of an animal that expects its food to arrive already softened. You have the face of something that eats soup. And if you are still here, you are exactly who this channel is for. I make videos about the parts of being human that are hiding in plain sight in your own body right now. Subscribe, it is free, and it genuinely decides whether videos like this get made, because we are only halfway down, and the next layer is where it stops being about food at all. But first, proof on living people. In Germany, researchers studied several hundred people on a long-term raw food diet. These are not cavemen. They have blenders, olive oil, avocados, supplements, a supermarket, a full year of abundance no ancestor of ours ever had, and they were still losing weight, chronically, and many could not stop. The stricter the diet, the worse it got. And here's the detail that ends the argument. Among the women, roughly a third stopped menstruating. Among the strictest, about half. Read that again. Half. Their bodies looked at the energy coming in and quietly switched off reproduction because there was not enough there to justify a baby. You are not an animal that can choose to eat raw. You are an animal that has lost the ability to. Look at what that dependency did to your day. A chimpanzee spends around 5 hours of every day chewing. Not eating, chewing. Grinding raw plant matter with a jaw built like industrial machinery, 5 hours, every day, forever. Gorillas are worse, closer to 8. That is not a meal, that is a full-time job with no weekends. Now how long do you spend chewing? It has been measured. Around half an hour a day. Half an hour. You have reclaimed 4.5 hours of every single day from the simple act of chewing your own food. That is 30 hours a week. Fire handed you 30 hours a week. What do you think a species does with 30 spare hours a week for 1,000,000 years? And be honest with me about this one, because I think about it more than I should. If I put you in a forest right now with no lighter, no matches, no glasses, nothing but what is growing around you, could you make fire? Not could you watch a video about it. Could you actually do it tonight in the wet before the temperature drops? Most of us could not. We are surrounded by a technology we personally cannot rebuild. Tell me in the comments if you have ever really made fire from scratch with your own hands, because I want to know how many of us are left. Now, before I sell you the beautiful version, I have to be straight with you, because there is a problem most channels will not mention. The theory says fire arrived with Homo erectus around 1.8 million years ago. That is what the biology screams. Small teeth, small gut, big brain, all showing up in the same body at the same time. Here's the problem. The archaeology does not go back that far. There is Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, 30 meters from the entrance, too deep for any lightning to reach, with burnt bone in a layer 1,000,000 years old. A few contested sites are older, but hearths everybody agrees on only show up around 400,000 years ago. So there is a gap of well over 1,000,000 years between the body that says fire and the ground that says prove it. And it gets worse, in the most interesting possible way. In France, archaeologists went through Neanderthal sites layer by layer expecting an obvious pattern. Cold period, more fire. It is an ice age, you are freezing, you build more fires. They found the exact opposite. Neanderthals used fire heavily in warm periods and barely at all in the coldest ones, which makes no sense, unless they could not make fire on demand. Unless they were still harvesting it from wildfires, which happen in warm, dry weather and not in freezing wet. Which would mean that 50,000 years ago, a big-brained human cousin still had no reliable way to start a fire. So how do you square that with a theory that says we have cooked for 2 million years? Honestly, nobody has fully squared it. But here's the fair answer. Fire barely leaves a mark. A stone tool survives 3 million years because it is a rock. A fire is ash, and ash is dust, and dust blows away. To find a fire from 1,000,000 years ago, you need one made inside a cave, left undisturbed, that survived every flood since, and that somebody happened to dig up. In the open air, where our ancestors actually lived, the odds are almost zero, so the absence of ancient hearths is not evidence that there were no ancient fires. It is evidence that ash is fragile, and the one piece of evidence that will never blow away is the body itself. The shrunken gut, the dead jaw gene, the impossible brain. Those are the ashes. They are just made of bone, which is a good moment for a fight, so let us have one. There are 2 camps, and I want to know which one you are in. Camp 1 says fire is the whole story, that cooking is the single thing that made us human, and everything else, language, tools, art, is downstream of a fire pit. Camp 2 says that is far too neat, that the meat was already doing it, or the tools, or the hunting, and cooking was one nice bonus among several. I have my answer. Go on. Pick a camp in the comments and defend it and be specific, because I read them and I will take sides. Now the layer where this stops being about dinner, because a fire does not only cook, it makes light. For every animal that has ever lived, the day ends when the sun sets. That is not a suggestion, that is physics. Darkness falls, you cannot see, predators can, so you stop. Every night for 4 billion years, life switched off. And then one animal lit a fire and added 4 hours to the day. Not a better spear, more time. Time that had never existed for any living thing before, and it changed how we sleep. Chimps nest up in the branches every night because the ground at night is where the leopards are, and sleeping in a tree means part of you never fully lets go. But a ring of fire keeps big cats out, so you can come down, you can lie flat, unconscious, defenseless, deeply asleep, in the middle of a continent full of things that eat primates, and be fine. Humans sleep less than other primates, but far more intensely, with more of the deep, dreaming, memory-filing kind. The brain that fire paid for needed somewhere safe to shut down and sort the day. But here's my favorite study in this whole video. An anthropologist spent years with the Juhuansi in the Kalahari and did something beautifully simple. She recorded what people talked about in the daytime, then what they talked about at night around the fire, and compared them. Daytime conversation was exactly what you would expect from any working group of primates. Complaints, logistics, who did what, gossip, office chat. Then the sun goes down, the fire goes up, and the entire content of human conversation changes. At night, around 80% of it was stories, not information, stories, about people who were somewhere else, about people who were dead, about people who never existed at all. And that is when it lands. Around that fire, in the dark, is where we practice being someone else. That is imagination, exercised nightly, for hundreds of thousands of years, by everybody, as the default evening activity of our species. Fire did not just make food digestible, it made other people's minds visible. Every myth, every religion, every song, every film you have cried at, every argument you have had online about a fictional character, all of it is the same behavior, invented by firelight, because firelight gave us 4 dark hours with nothing to do but talk. You are not descended from people who cooked. You are descended from people who sat up late. And now the most human thing in this story, hiding in plain sight. To cook something, you have to not eat it. Obvious, right? It is not obvious. It is extraordinary. You are a hungry animal holding food, and the food is right there, and you have to put it down on the fire and stand there, hungry, watching your own dinner, doing nothing while it gets better. No other animal on Earth has ever had to do that. Every other creature that has ever lived runs on one rule. Food acquired, food eaten. We broke that rule. We invented the gap between having food and eating it, and in that gap is everything. Farming is that gap. Saving money is that gap. Every long-term plan you have ever made is a descendant of standing next to a fire being hungry on purpose. And a second, darker problem arrives with the first. Cooked food is a pile of concentrated, defenseless calories sitting still, in the open, smelling incredible for 20 minutes, with everybody looking at it. Drop that into a chimpanzee troop and it does not become dinner. It becomes a robbery. The biggest male takes it. Every time. And then nobody ever cooks again. Because why would you put 20 minutes of your labor and your hunger into something that just gets taken off you? Cooking is only possible in a group that has agreed in advance not to steal. Before the meal, there had to be a deal. And the ambitious version of the theory, which I will flag honestly, is that this deal built the whole household. Critics say that is a lot of weight to hang on a potato. But at a cave in Israel, 300,000 years old, there is a hearth in the center, used over and over across generations, and the tools cluster around it. Somebody made things over there. Somebody butchered over here. The fire is in the middle. That is a floor plan. That is a room. We invented the living room before we invented the wall. The hearth is the oldest address in human history. And if you appreciate that I am flagging the arguments instead of just selling you the clean version, hit like. Genuinely, that is the only signal I get that people want the honest one. 2 layers left, and the last one is why I made this video. Layer 1. Back to that sentence because it has grown teeth. Cooking is digestion outside the body. But look at what you actually are now. You have an organ that breaks down your food. You cannot live without it. Your entire physiology has restructured itself around it, and it is not inside you. It is in your kitchen. It is a stomach you keep in a room that you share with your family. That can be improved by a stranger in another country, and then that improvement gets sent to you. Your species did not evolve a better gut. It evolved a gut it could put down, redesign, and hand on. That is the real trick, not fire. Externalization. Fire was simply the first organ we ever kept outside our own skin. Which brings me to the last layer, and it is not a happy one. If a brain is a purchase, and you only keep it while it pays for itself, then a brain is also something you can stop affording. Our brains peaked somewhere in the late Ice Age, and since then, the average human brain has got smaller. Something like 10% smaller. About a tennis ball of the thing you are so proud of. Gone. Why is genuinely argued about? Some say we got more efficient. Some say we domesticated ourselves, and tame animals always have smaller brains. And some say the thing that should keep you up tonight, which is that once the group starts remembering things for you, you personally do not have to. The brain is expensive. If somebody else is carrying it, you stop paying for it. And we never stopped running the trick. Look in your kitchen now. Ultra-processed food is not a betrayal of cooking. It is cooking, taken to its logical end. Food ground, heated, extruded, and pre-digested so thoroughly that your body barely has to do anything at all. Exactly what fire did, perfected by chemists and optimized by accountants. The same move that built you, pushed one step too far, quietly taking your health apart. That is the mechanism working correctly on a species that never evolved an off switch, because for 2 million years, there was no such thing as too much energy for too little effort. So here's the argument I want to have with you. Is ultra-processed food just cooking version 2? And we are only upset because this time we can see the machine. Or is there a real line between roasting a root and engineering a snack your brain cannot say no to? Tell me where the line is, because I do not think anybody actually knows. So look at your own body properly. You have no claws. Your teeth could not tear raw hide if your life depended on it. Your jaw muscles run on a broken gene. Your gut is too small for your own diet. Your brain burns a fifth of everything you eat and cannot be fed without a fire. On paper, you are a badly built animal, a primate that sold off every piece of survival equipment it was issued with. And you did it deliberately, for one thing, a controlled fire. So why are we the only creature that cooks? Not because we were clever enough to think of it. The chimps thought of it. Not because we liked the taste. Everything likes the taste. We are the only ones who cook because we are the only ones who walked toward the fire instead of away, and then never left, and then rebuilt our entire body around the assumption that it would still be burning tomorrow. And it never went out. That fire in Wonderwork Cave 1,000,000 years ago and the ring on your hob are the same fire, handed from hand to hand, without a single break, across 40,000 generations. And you are holding it now. Every other animal on this planet eats its food the moment it gets it. You are the only one that waits. So tonight, when you are standing in your kitchen, hungry, staring at something that is not ready yet, mildly annoyed about it, that is not a small moment. That is the oldest, strangest, most human thing you will do all day. You are waiting. Tell me in the comments what the first meal you ever learned to cook was. Like it, subscribe, and go and stare at a fire.